What do you get when you pair World War I naval camouflage with modern Swiss watchmaking? The Ball and Oracle Time Engineer 2 Dazzle. And today we're going to be discussing why we created this watch, the history behind the dial, and address that niggling little debate about legibility. So why did we create this watch? Last year we launched the Christopher Ward Dune Shoreline, a British coast-inspired twist on the brand's entry-level tool watch with a three-dimensional wavy dial. Obviously it's hard to follow up a watch that was so successful it was brought into Christopher Ward's mainline collection, but for our second collaboration we still wanted to put our own distinctly British twist on a solid tool watch, and few brands make solid quite like Ball. We've always been fans of Ball's collection, they're cool, rugged and accessible, punching well above their price tag in terms of specs. We've gotten hands-on with a good chunk of their watches over the years, about half the team here own one, and knew we wanted to work with them on something special. We were already keen on the idea of using camouflage, but when we came across the idea of Dazzle, quirky, visually impactful and intrinsically British, we knew we had to use it. So what is Dazzle Camo? Dazzle Camo, or Razzle Dazzle for those of you stateside, was invented by British artist Norman Wilkinson after World War I ships were being sunk at an astonishing rate by German U-boats. The geometrical design was intended to confuse the enemy rather than hide the ships, breaking up their lines so that it was hard to tell even what direction they were heading. Over a century ago, when there were no lock-on mechanisms and gunners had to lead their shots, this kind of camo made a ship that much harder to hit. At least that was the theory. The design was used through World War I and into World War II, and came in various shapes and colours. It appeared on ships from aircraft carriers such as the HMS Argus to American battleships such as the USS Missouri. Its effectiveness wasn't always pronounced, but in the theatre of war every advantage you can gain is important. These days you'll more regularly see it on under-wraps hypercar prototypes being tested out on the track, a pattern that's often very similar to the sharp, angular version we opted for here. The reason's the same, it makes it harder to make out the exact shape of the car. Which brings us to a question we've been asked a lot recently. What about legibility? Yes, it's not the most legible watch in the world, but the ice blue tips, a riff on the open sky of the ocean, the size of the hands and the chunky indexes mean it's not hard to read. We're not recommending it for saturation diving or aerial acrobatics, and we don't expect it to be commissioned as a service watch anytime soon. But if you're worried about reading it, it's been on my wrist for the past month and I've had no issues. And if after all that you're still struggling to read it, just turn the lights off. Those tritium tubes will do the rest. What are the specs? We were initially toying with Ball's uber-successful Marvelite as a baseline, but instead opted for their earlier Engineer 2 case, specifically for its slimmer profile measuring 40mm across and 11mm thick. On the wrist it feels great, it has presence but isn't a wrist monster and looks equally at home on the solid stainless steel bracelet and navy blue NATO number. For the movement, we chose Ball's COSC-certified RR1101-C, an automatic movement with a 56-hour power reserve. We also went for an open caseback as we wanted it to stand out from the rest of the Ball tool watches out there, which usually opt for solid casebacks. It's shock resistant, water resistant to 100 meters, and overall a solid piece of kit. The Dazzle pattern on the dial is embossed, creating a semi-3D effect, something we loved on the Dune Shoreline, and of course paired with Ball's signature tritium gas tubes, which I mentioned earlier. They're self-illuminating, meaning you won't need to charge the watch in sunlight for it to glow, perfect if you're below decks on the destroyer for a couple of days, or just need a new nightlight. It's not every day you get to turn a century-old military concept into a wristwatch, but here we are. Hopefully you've enjoyed the look behind the design, and if not, well, at least you now know what Dazzle Camo is. See you next time, and if you're interested, there are a few watches left available. Just not one of 100. That one's mine.